Condoleezza Rice, thank you for joining us.
It's a pleasure to be with you, Fareed.
So it's been about 2 years that President Obama has been in office. You're a former National Security Advisor, former Secretary of State, former and now again college professor in American foreign policy. What grade would you give President Obama?
Well, I only give grades to Stanford students, but I believe that there's a lot of continuity in the policies that have been pursued. And while I may or may not agree with every decision that's been made, I know how hard it is to be in there and to make those decisions. I, like President Bush, have said I'm going to make certain that I don't chirp at my successors. You know, you're making difficult calculations every day. I remember very well that sometimes I would get up and I'd read the newspaper and it would say, the Bush administration should get Iran to cooperate and they should get sanctions against Iran. And I would think, why didn't I think of that? You know, it's just hard. But I think that this is a very good national security team and they're protecting the country.
You know, this is going to horrify both people on the left and the right. Because, you know, the left wanted a sharp break with Bush's policies. The right thinks that Obama is betraying the country. You're saying, no, there's an element of continuity.
The United States and its foreign policy is a great big aircraft carrier. It doesn't turn around quickly. Our interests tend to be stable. And again, while I may not agree with every word that's been uttered, with everything that's been done, the United States is a country that is pursuing its interest and its values, and that's very, very important too. And I think what we're seeing is that you have your presidential election, the president becomes president, and then he realizes that his responsibilities to protect the country look very different from inside the Oval Office than in anticipation of getting there.
So let's talk about some of those decisions. Libya, President Obama is trying to do something that seems a little different in Libya, which is to say the United States wants to help, it wants to be supportive, but this is not an area that affects our core interests to such an extent that we want to be the lead player. So he is trying this process of letting the Europeans take more of the lead, we provide some support. Is that the right model?
Well, first let's talk about Libya. I am very grateful that we disarmed Colonel Gadafi. I'm very grateful that his WMD are sitting in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, because we would be facing a very different situation right now in Libya where he's still in possession of those weapons of mass destruction. There are things about the way this operation is unfolding that I think are questionable, that are troubling. I'm not quite certain what the end game is here. I'm not quite certain who the rebels are and therefore what part they will play in the end game. I think it's good that others can take a lead like the British and French, but you know, NATO is not an alien being to us. We are indeed central to NATO, and so you can't actually hand an operation off to NATO. The United States is too central and too much an important part of its capability. And so we'll see how this comes out. I don't mind.
Would you have gone in? Would you have intervened?
Look, this is one, Fareed, I'm usually very clear on these things, but I was kind of 50-50 on this one. I could see on both sides of this an important set of principles to engage. My concern is that humanitarian interventions are always a bit slippery. Are we intervening in a humanitarian affair because someone is about to slaughter his people quickly on CNN? That's probably not a good argument. But we don't intervene if they're slaughtering them slowly out of eye of the press. And so we have to be a little bit careful with the argument for humanitarian intervention. I think you could argue that in the middle of the Arab Spring, to have Gaddafi successfully mow down his people and by brute force stop the demonstrations, that might have been an argument for intervention.
Don't ask, don't tell. Do you agree with President Obama's decision?
I do agree with the decision on don't ask, don't tell. This is a country that somehow finds its way around these difficult social issues in time and given enough time. And
well, why didn't you guys do it then?
Well, President Bush had a lot on his plate. And everything can't be done in one administration. But sure, I think it was time, and I think Bob Gates has handled it very, very well. I think the issue was an issue of military, for the military, of making certain that we had a military that still functioned well, and once the Pentagon was satisfied with that, I see no reason not to do it.
perhaps the biggest strategic decision President Obama took in his first 2 years was the decision to do the surge in Afghanistan, close to doubling, maybe even tripling the number of troops in total. It's a large commitment to a kind of very comprehensive counterinsurgency campaign that is very expensive, could go on for years. Is it the right move?
Well, we indeed, in the last year or so of the Bush administration, went through a fairly thorough review of Afghanistan. It's fair to say, and I want people to understand, that in 2005, 2006, things weren't going so badly in Afghanistan. They seemed to be going in the right direction, in fact. And it really was the development of the safe haven in Pakistan that made the situation in Afghanistan look very different by 2008. And so we did start to increase troop presence and to broaden the counterinsurgency effort there. It's now a quite large effort, and we can get this done. It may not take, I don't think it will take forever. What we're looking to do is to help the Afghans build security forces that can prevent an existential threat to Afghanistan from the Taliban, get them more decent government. It's not going to look like Switzerland, but more decent government. And then I think we can begin a drawdown pretty safely.
So I have to ask you, Don Rumsfeld says that you were, to put it bluntly, a bad national security advisor, that you didn't take to President Bush the hard, difficult differences among his key national security advisors, and that produced a lot of the dysfunction that people commented on. And he really puts it pretty squarely on you. What do you say?
Don is a friend, and he'll always be a friend, but he's a grumpy guy. All right, he is. And he doesn't know what he's talking about. He never followed me from the Situation Room to the Oval Office, where the President and I would have intense discussions about what was going on in that room, who thought what, and where the President would decide, go back in there and keep seeing if you can find a consensus, or where the President would take a decision. And the President was not shy about taking a decision. And so Don doesn't know what he's talking about, and plus I'll write my own book and then we can talk about it.
Condoleezza Rice, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.